last year. They won 11 football games, and it's a football team that seems to do it on the ground, although this year they've gotten a little bit of an aerial attack to go with it. But we asked their head coach, Lorenzo Hernandez, why are they so good with their running game?
At Garfield, in my early years, we've trying to put up the ball, and we started identifying the fact that, you know, we don't have that type of kid. We have a kid that's a physical kid that comes from a very tough environment and then wants to get after people, and that's exactly what we do. We get after people for fourth quarters, and, you know, whatever happens, happens. But I think that basically looking back, it was just that, you know, our kids are physical kids.
Patrick Vargas is the quarterback. He's 5'5", 5'6", who knows how tall he really is. But the guy's 6-0 as a starter, and flat out, Patrick Vargas is a winner.
He's an amazing little player. Against Birmingham, he'd go back to pass, and before Birmingham's defensive backs ever had a chance, the receiver, he would release the ball, and the receiver then would cut and catch it, and so there was no chance to stop that pass. I mean, he just has a lot of heart, and he's a very smart football player. The other player I was so impressed with was Lanny Delgado, the defensive back. He's a 4-year starter. He was taking on Devon Flournoy. He has a scholarship to USC, and he was stopping him. I know Flournoy was hurting with an ankle injury, but it was Delgado's defense that made the difference. I just think you got to credit Lorenzo Hernandez for his courage to move Garfield from the City Invitational to the City Championship Division. Other coaches should use him as an example. He just went out on the limb. Nobody knew what Garfield was going to do this year. He decided it's time for them to step up, and I think there's other programs in the city who need to take that risk. If you're going to get better, if you're going to be able to try and compete with the Birmingham, the Crenshaws of the world, you got to take a little bit of a risk. He took that risk, and it paid off, and probably the greatest win in Garfield history. At
29-28 over Birmingham. He does have fine running backs in Sergio Macedo and Frankie Diaz. Both of them rushed for over 1,000 yards last year, and a big fullback in Omar Hernandez. It is a good football team at Garfield. Let's move ahead and talk about the Huntington Park Spartans. The Spartans last year 7-6. They stunned Eagle Rock in the playoffs, and at that point, Eagle Rock was undefeated in the Invitational playoffs. Huntington Park is coached by Leroy Wilson. Every year, Huntington Park seems to have a competitive football team.
Right. They usually do well because they have strong offensive linemen. If they have those people back, then they should be competitive.
The Jordan Bulldogs. Here's another football team that's so outstanding. Last year, they were dominant in this league. Very strong squad. A lot of people talking the Bulldogs up. They're coached by Elijah Asante, and he knows if he's going to have a big year, he has to have started off in the big game against Locke. So what is the importance of trying to win the Locke game?
Definitely a tremendous rivalry. It's a must-win game for both of us. It's a game that a lot rides on it because we share the same community. We share a lot of the same kids. They decide whether they're going to go to Locke or Jordan, and a lot of times it's really based on which team wins the previous year before they come in. So it's a really important game.
Well, he won the Locke game, so he's obviously off to a good start. He's got a lot of talent, and I think it starts with James Boyd, their quarterback.
Well, he's got a scholarship to USC as an athlete. Will probably be playing defensive end, but he's their outstanding quarterback. Jordan has lots of talent, but they have a schedule that is unbelievable.
Second to none, really.
They play Esperanza from the southern section. They play Mater Dei, St. Bonaventure. I would not have done this, but it just shows you what he's like. Lorenzo Hernandez, Coach Asante, has total belief in his players. He's trying to build up this program. He's challenging them, and we're going to see what's going to happen. But I admire his audacity to go out and play those type of teams.
Well, Elijah believes they're going to go undefeated, run the table, and be the #1 team in the country. You got to have that kind of enthusiasm and that kind of confidence. He does have a player in James Boyd. We mentioned him as the quarterback, but he also plays defensive end. He's a unique player, isn't he?
He's just a good athlete, and they have a lot of good. Eric Hunter's a good defensive back receiver. They have a freshman who had an interception in the opening game named Raymond Ford III, a 14-year-old freshman. So there's talent there. I just think that we have to see what kind of offensive and defensive lines that Jordan has, and will they be physical enough to handle the Birminghams and the Carsons down the road.
Another program that's stepping it up in the Eastern League is the Roosevelt Rough Riders. Of course, they won the East LA Classic last year and startled Garfield. Their head football coach is Javier Sid. He runs that spread offense. But we asked him about the East LA Classic.
Oh, the Classic is just the biggest game for us, for everybody on the east side. It's a great game. A lot of people come out. A lot of effort goes into putting that game together, and I think you see the best of East LA and Boyle Heights that day, and our kids do a great job.
They have an experienced quarterback here in Jesse Diaz who runs that spread offense. The Rough Riders can really throw it down the field.
I saw Roosevelt in the summer, and they have 7 starters back on offense. They're going to score some points, not just besides Jesse Diaz. Rafael Ortega's a good lineman and linebacker, and Manny Ayon, the junior receiver, can really catch the ball. Nelson Maldonado's a 6'3", 280-pound lineman. So as good as Garfield started this season, they're not going to go into that Roosevelt game feeling overconfident because they know that Roosevelt is going to be able to put some points on the scoreboard.
You know, when I did the game last year for KLCS and watched the East LA Classic, I was just impressed with Javier Cid and the focus they had and how well they run that spread offense. I mean, they can really throw the football.
Yeah, well, I think it's good to run the spread off in the city section. It gives a different look, and if you're able to pass the ball, that means you should be able to compete against teams that maybe are more physical than you. It gives you a little bit of an advantage.
We've talked about some strong teams in the Eastern League, the likes of Garfield, Huntington Park, Jordan, Roosevelt. But I'll tell you, Southeast, the Jaguars may not take a back seat to anyone. They've already beaten North Hollywood 43-0. Their head coach is Roger Sati, and we asked him about this year's team goals.
Well, our goal is like every year is to make the playoffs. That's our number one and foremost goal is to make the playoffs. And number two is to make sure that the kids leave the program well educated and move on to higher academics.
What about the Jaguars? They look impressive, and they got a great running back, don't they?
Senan Carson's the top returning running back in the city. He ran for 240 yards in the first game of the season against North Hollywood. So I agree with you. Southeast is going to be a very tough team to beat in the Eastern League.
Yeah, Carson rushed for nearly 1,600 yards last year, 1,587 yards, and again, as Eric said, he was the top rusher who returns this year. You okay? You're coughing a little bit there.
Coughing a little bit.
That's okay. Everyone's excited about the Eastern League. The last team we do want to talk about is the Southgate Rams, and it's a football team that has struggled in recent years. 0-10 last year. Reginald Grant takes over the program for Gary Cordray, who steps out and retires. What does he have to do? What is Reginald going to have to do there to get Southgate organized properly?
Well, Southgate really got hurt by the opening of the new school, Southeast, so they need to get back some of those loyal players and start building up some strength programs because right now they're at the bottom of the Eastern League.
All right, who wins the Eastern League championship? Which is the team that's going to walk out of there with the league championship?
I think you have to go with Jordan, but based on what Garfield did, don't underestimate the Bulldogs. They believe that they can play with anybody, and that Birmingham win tells me that they can.
I really think this is a very entertaining league, and I think there's 3 or 4 teams that could win the league title. Garfield, Huntington Park, never to be overlooked, but I think it's going to be Huntington Park, or Garfield, Jordan, and Southeast. I give a shot to win the league championship as well, but I got to go with you there. I think Jordan probably is the favorite. We're going to step out on our kickoff show here on KLCS and come back and talk about the Coliseum League